Hi, Reddit Omicron. This is Jimbo831, and I decided to create a dragon guide for Clan Wars to hopefully help us out with our Town Hall 8s in particular. Most Town Hall 8s, especially once you get 3-star dragons, should be able to get 3 stars against other Town Hall 8s using some combination of dragons and balloons most of the time. Our last several wars, we've had a lot of issues with that and a lot of kind of similar mistakes happening that's preventing us from getting those stars on the first try especially. So we're needing to go back and use a lot of cleanup attacks on lower Town Hall 8 bases. If we can consistently get 3 stars on these Town Hall 8 bases, especially on our first tries, that'll allow our Town Hall 9s and even our higher Town Hall 8s more leeway to get stars on higher bases and not have to come clean up the low bases that we weren't able to 3-star with dragons. So, obviously we want to keep working on our hogs and have a good alternative strategy, but I really wanted to make sure we focused on a few different things while we're planning our dragon attacks so that we can be more consistent with them going forward. So I went back and looked at our recent war with a Chinese clan that we faced. I pulled 4 good example attacks and 4 bad example attacks so we can analyze them, take a look at some of the successes and some of the mistakes, and try to make sure we have the key strategies going forward so that we can be more successful. So just a couple quick things that I want to cover is the general concept behind the dragon attacks and the general keys for success that we want to look for. So with any dragon attack, the biggest and most important thing is to get those air defenses down as quickly as possible. So you're going to see 2 main bases that you want to face. The kind of number one is with all 3 air defenses located centralized in the core of the base. And then the other option is with your 3 air defenses spread out in some way. Now, again, since we want to get all the air defenses down as quickly as possible, we have to approach those 2 options pretty differently. When you have all 3 air defenses in the base, typically you want to try to funnel your dragons into that core as quickly as possible, put a rage and put a heal to keep them alive and get them to take those 3 air defenses down in the core all at once. Oftentimes with balloons trailing right behind the dragons, that can be a very effective way to do that because the balloons will simply just target the defenses while the dragons take the damage while they take out other buildings. So now whenever you have bases with spread out air defenses, you have to think about things a little bit differently and even maybe a little bit more specifically. So you want to think about what's the quickest way to get all 3 air defenses down as soon as possible. Sometimes it might be using a lightning spell, especially if you have 1 air defense that's separated from 2 others. A lightning spell can be a really good option because then you can get your dragons to funnel to the other 2 relatively quickly. If none of them are near each other, usually you can find some sort of a way to either take 1 out with a lightning spell and take 1 out with some balloons from your clan castle and have your dragons attack from the other one. Or you can even have your dragons attack where they'll generally take out 2 with a rage spell and use your balloons to take out the other one. So there's a lot of different options, and really you just have to analyze every base and try to plan exactly which one you think is going to be the best. But what's really important is that you are putting this kind of planning into the attack. If you just drop your dragons down and hope for the best, you're not going to have a lot of success unless the base is just really weak. Even if you go through the basic steps of trying to create a funnel by placing 2 dragons on the edges first before you drop the rest, you might see a little bit more success, but you really want to think more specifically about how are we getting to the air defenses. If you're dropping balloons, how exactly are they going to path? How long are they going to take to get there because they do move a lot slower? So these are really all the things you want to be thinking about. So without further ado, let's take a look at some specific attacks from that war with the Chinese clan and see what we can learn from those. So first we've got an attack from mooses that we're going to take a look at here. So starting off by just taking a look at the base, what you'll first notice is that you have all 3 air defenses centralized in the core here. So as we talked about, the best strategy is typically to funnel the dragons into the core, use a rage spell to get them in there, and then once they're in the core, you use a rage and a heal. Sometimes you can use the heal with the first rage spell. It really is kind of depends on on when they're taking damage from the air defenses and the clan castle, various different things. But the general idea is you want to either use 3 rage or 2 rage and a heal, get them into the core, and get them to take out these air defenses as quickly as possible. So with this particular base, if I were planning an attack, I would actually attack up here from the northwest. And the reason being is because the 2 air defenses here are on both sides of the town hall, and this other air defense here is towards the northwest. So by coming in from the northwest, you'll engage this air defense first, the town hall, and then the other 2 immediately. If you were to come in from the opposite side, for example, you would actually probably take out this air defense and this town hall, while this air defense would still be hitting you, and even once you take that out, the one in the back will still be hitting your dragons pretty hard. So I usually like to attack towards the side that the air defenses are more weighted towards. In that case, this is the northwest. Well, one thing here that Mooses does that I'm not a big fan of is attacking from the corner. He starts this attack here from the western corner. Typically when you attack from one of the corners, it's a lot harder to funnel your dragons. They will eventually start peeling off to the sides a little bit more easily than they will if you funnel from a side. So I think it's generally a good rule of thumb to almost always attack with dragons from one side. And you'll see what happens here with Moose's dragons, some of them heading out to the edges. And we'll take a look at the attack, and as you can see, he has brought 3 lightning spells. As I mentioned earlier, I typically prefer to use 3 lightnings whenever you have kind of separated air defenses. You can make an argument for using 3 lightnings in the core, and sometimes it could be successful, but it's a little bit harder. So what he's going to do is he's going to lightning this air defense here and attack from this side here, hoping to get these 2 out before they have a chance to do too much damage. So starting the replay here, you'll see he's using his Barbarian King to start the funnel on this edge here, and a dragon up here to start the funnel on this edge. Now, unfortunately, these 3 dragons here kind of got drawn off already. There's 2 going into the middle here. And he also held back 4 dragons. Now, one of the problems that you can run into when you don't drop all your dragons, generally speaking, at the same time, is that the rest of the dragons will take too long to move into the base. One of the big strengths of the dragon attack is that dragons do a lot of damage and have a lot of hit points. And whenever you have a group of dragons together, they're clustered up, they're taking down buildings really quickly, and one of them can tank for the rest. When you separate your dragons and you hold some dragons back, those dragons don't kill these buildings, especially these storages, nearly quickly enough. And they'll just sit there and get peppered with air defenses while they get stuck on trash buildings. I think the idea that Moose has had here was that he would use the first round of dragons to clear out the edges and then drop the next 4 in so they would rush straight to the core. But the problem is by the time those 4 dragons get there, the other ones are all very low on health already. Especially with the balloons he has in his clan castle, by the time those get there, it's kind of too late already. So as you'll see, he lightnings the back air defense, drops his balloons in his last dragon. But at this point, these 2 remaining air defenses still don't have any dragons near them, and they're just going to work. And what you'll see happens here eventually is the dragons do get in, and along with the help of the balloons, they do take out the air defenses. But by the time they do, too many dragons are dead. The dragons that are left have too few hit points remaining. So right now we've just taken... So now we've got these 5 dragons left. The majority of them are almost dead. The last of the balloons is about to go down. So he had a pretty decent chance of getting the 2 stars here, just a little bad luck with those dragons dying so quickly. But the remaining dragons are now funneling out around the edge of the base. They're low on health, and they're just waiting to get picked off by the archer towers. So the biggest mistakes in this attack were coming in from the corner, waiting too long to drop those dragons, and not really creating a good funnel, although that's very hard to do whenever you do attack from the corner, as I mentioned. So, unfortunately this attack only led to 1 star, and, had we taken a different approach, we might have been able to get some more stars on it. So we're going to take a look at Alex's attack here on this base. Looking at the base right off the bat, we can see that the air defenses are fairly centralized. We've also got these builder huts in the corners that we want to think about and how we're going to deal with those. Typically when the builder huts are in the corners, I like to start a dragon or a barbarian king on those builder huts from the side I plan to attack from. That way then the dragons, once they push to the other side of the base, don't have to double back. You might run out of time when that happens. On this particular base, since we have the 2 air defenses on this side and the 1 air defense on this side, I would initiate my attack from the northwest, coming in like this. That way you can get to those 2 as quickly as possible. You could potentially use 3 lightning spells on this separated air defense and then attack from this side here. You also might just want to go ahead and use 2 rage and a heal, try to get into the core and take it all out. You really could make a pretty good case for either, and I think that both would have a chance for 3 stars if they were executed correctly. So as you'll see from this attack, Alec does in fact start off by taking out these builder huts, and he does attack from the northwest. So one of the advantages with this particular strategy here is that these dragons on these builder huts, after they complete killing the builder huts, they're going to come in and they'll start your funnels right in these spots here. And so that's exactly what he does. And so once we get those dragons beginning the funnels, we'll take a look at the base and figure out how we can best get the dragons into this core right here. So the most centralized perimeter building is this army camp. So really what we want is we want our dragons finishing up around this army camp. We want the last of our dragons killing that army camp after all the other buildings on each side of the perimeter are dead. Because then once they go from the army camp, they'll immediately head into these storages right here. Or maybe even this cannon and these storages. So that would be the ideal situation. Once you have all the dragons there, you can drop your rage and your heal, and they'll go to work. Now what happens, though, is if you kill the army camp before you kill the rest of the perimeter buildings, all the dragons will start getting pushed around this way and pushed around this way. So that's why the funnel is really important. And you can't necessarily always just funnel with 1 dragon on each edge. Because even though these dragons on the edges here will take out some of these trash buildings, there's still a whole bunch of them. So you really want to drop your dragons on the outside, 1 at a time, 2 at a time really, 1 on each edge, and then 1 just a little bit inside, working your way back in. And on this particular base, I wouldn't drop any dragons in the middle until all of the outside buildings are down, other than that army camp. And that way you could just drop the last few dragons on the army camp, and then they would head straight into these storages. In this particular raid here, though, you'll see Alex drops a couple dragons right here and then a couple dragons right here. Now as soon as these 2 on the army camp kill that army camp, these other buildings are still alive, and so they're going to funnel over this way. And even though the outside buildings are all dead now, they're just going to get to this cannon here, and then that might start pushing them off this way, so you got to be careful there. Now he does save 2 dragons to come in here in the middle at the end, which was probably good in this situation. But between them, there's only 1 other dragon left in the middle, and that ends up being the cost of this raid. Another big mistake here, too, is that these balloons just come down way too late. So you really have to be careful whenever you're dropping your balloons that you drop them down when they still have a chance to have a big impact on the raid. You also want to be careful that all the defensive buildings are in a position to draw the balloons into the core. In this case, the dragons had actually just finished killing those 2 air defenses, and that actually drew these balloons over to the outside here at these perimeter defenses. So now those balloons are going to take a really long time working their way around the edge until they get back to this air defense here. And the whole time the air defense is just going to be peppering all of the dragons and killing them off 1 by 1. So the big mistake that we had here is just A, dropping the balloons too late before they could funnel to the right place and have an important impact on the raid, and B, just creating that initial funnel. So it's really important when you do create your funnels that you think about every building, where it's going to draw every dragon, not just putting a dragon on each side and then dropping the rest. So every base requires a slightly modified drop of your dragons. So always important to think of. Unfortunately, Alec gets really close to the 2nd star here with his Barb King coming in. If I remember correctly, he's going to get that Town Hall down to almost no health. But then at the last minute, those cannons are going to finish him off, unfortunately. So this raid was another 1-star raid. So the next raid we're going to look at here is from Mohawk. And this particular base can be really tricky. As you'll notice here, we've got this moat with no buildings in it. There's a good chance that there's some Teslas and or other traps in there. But, from the first glance, there are no buildings in that moat. And the problem with that is that when you have the dragons on the outside here, the closest buildings are always going to be on the edge. And this base is designed to just keep your dragons going around in a circle outside, while these centralized air defenses in this archer tower pick them off one at a time. So you have to be really careful with bases like this. This is definitely an anti-dragon base. And if you don't attack it exactly correctly, then you'll have a very difficult time getting more than 1 star. In this particular one, though, since everything is very centralized, this is another good example of a base that you can get your balloons into the core if you can, and then they can do a lot of damage. So when it comes to planning a Dragloon attack like that, you really want to think about how the balloons are going to path. And so balloons are always going to go to the nearest defenses. Now, if I were planning this attack here, I would look at these 2 air defenses on this southeast side right here. Those are the 2 closest air defenses together, and so I would attack from that side. And so the ideal thing here is to get your balloons into this red circle area here where those 2 air defense and that mortar is. So how do you path balloons into there? Well, if you drop your balloons from the edge over here, your closest are going to be all of these defenses right here, and you've got a whole line of defenses. Now, other than that line, which includes even this cannon here, this cannon back here is the next closest defense. So if you can use your dragons to take out all of these other defenses, so that this mortar, or even maybe this air defense right here, are the closest defense to your balloon drop, I would actually drop my balloons right about here after all these other defenses have been destroyed. That'll allow your balloons to funnel straight into the core. You can put a rage on them and let them do some damage in there. The other advantage here is since this person has this moat, that means that you can have your dragons on these trash buildings over here without really taking much damage except from these couple archer towers. So if you put your dragons here, making sure that they funnel into that archer tower, over here, making sure that they funnel into that cannon, and then the rest of them in the middle, by the time you take out all these other buildings, you could just drop those loons right away. Now, as we mentioned earlier, it's important to make sure that you're taking the outside of these buildings out first, and then the inside ones out second. So you have a couple dragons left still alive right here in the middle, and then your balloons coming in right behind them. The dragons will take the fire from this air defense, the balloons will kill everything in that core, and then the rest is pretty easy cleanup from there. So that's how I would plan this raid. Let's take a look and see what Mohawk does and how he approaches it. So one thing that you'll see right here, and this is just one of the biggest no-nos whenever you're doing dragon raids, you'll see what Mohawk did is he actually dropped all of his dragons in the exact same spot, one after the other. So, just holding your finger down and spamming all the dragons is rarely going to be effective. The reason why is you have absolutely no funnel at all. And then so now all these dragons right here, they're going to kill the buildings in their area, and then they're going to just randomly split up. Some will go that way, some will go that way. Especially the way this base is designed, not a single dragon will get into the core, and they're just going to keep pathing around the outside. So no matter what you do whenever you're planning your raids, never a good idea to drop all of your dragons in one spot. It's almost always going to cause them to separate and split up. The other problem too is if you do drop all of your dragons in the exact same spot, you could get into some trouble if you have high-level wizards coming out of the clan castle. I've seen a raid once where a bunch of level 6 wizards came out and just killed all 10 dragons within a second or two. If they all hit that mass of dragons at the same time, they're all going to be wiped out. So you always want just a little bit of space through your dragons. Even if you want them in the same general area, you want to separate them enough. But again, the most important part here is that he didn't create any sort of a funnel before he dropped all of his dragons on the same spot. So We'll take a look and see what happens, but I'm certainly predicting that they're going to go around the edges here. As you see, we actually got one dragon that wandered back here to take out that builder's hut. These ones here are kind of making their way into the corner. Now this Tesla popped up, and that actually could be a good thing. It might draw some dragons in, but unfortunately it didn't in this case. He did do a pretty good balloon drop, though. Whenever that for air defense right here was the first target is when and where he dropped the balloons. So that was actually an excellent balloon drop. If he had some dragons heading into the core with those balloons, there's a pretty good chance they would have taken out all of the air defenses. But without any dragons to tank for them, they were only able to take out these two. So overall, excellent balloon drop, but without the proper funnel, the dragons weren't in there to help the balloons. So we've got still 5 dragons alive over here on the edge. They're going to path around the outside. And having 5 dragons alive and together like that is pretty good, but since they're not going to find their way into the core, it's not going to be good enough to get a second star, unfortunately. So it's just going to be slow from here on out while the defenses pick off the remaining dragons one at a time. And this will be another 1-star raid here. So here we're going to be looking at another attack on the exact same base that Mohawk attacked. This one's by ST Bomber. And so, we already talked about this base and the approach that I would take, kind of the pitfalls that you might run into with this anti-dragon moat in the middle. So let's just take a look at the attack and see what kind of strategy ST Bomber is going to use and see what's effective here. So far we've got these 2 dragons that he's dropped right here. Looks like he's just trying to pick off some of these trash buildings. So I'm not quite sure where he's trying to make the funnel just yet. So then we just drop the rest of the dragons right after those. And so I'm just going to pause that here for a second and kind of take a look at what we've got so far. So it actually is generally a good idea on these types of bases to drop a couple dragons early on to start your funnel. Since these air defenses are so centralized, they actually can't attack your dragons out on the edges. And so the dragons will do pretty good damage out there and start taking out a couple trash buildings that you want. So what he did was he actually took out this first line of buildings right here, and then he dropped all the rest of his dragons right in the middle on these buildings. So the thought process here is good in that, we want to take out the trash buildings that could get them distracted. The problem, though, is that there's still these other defensive buildings right here to distract them, and then also over here on this side as well. And so really, if he would have followed up with another dragon or 2 over here to take out, let's say, this little cluster of buildings, and then one to take out this little cluster of buildings, if you drop the rest right here in the middle, then their next move is to go into the core, which is exactly what you want. But because he left these buildings and these buildings, I'm predicting that these dragons are going to split up. Half of them will go this way, half of them will go this way, and again, we'll see them pathing around the outside. He did put a rage on them here, which is a good timing to use the rage because these 2 air defenses have started picking up the dragons. And once you start taking fire from air defenses, that's when you want to get your rage down. Especially if you get your clan castle troops out, you want your rage and your heal down to get through that as quickly as possible. So as you can see, once the dragons take out those central buildings, they immediately start splitting and moving off to the edge. Now he does a pretty good job with the balloon drop here. Again, these balloons are going to go straight into the core, exactly like we want. And we actually had the clan castle drew a couple dragons into the core as well. So because of that clan castle, we got pretty fortunate here, and a couple of these dragons came in and got into this rage with the balloons. I think what's going to happen, though, is these balloons are going to die before they can take out this last air defense. We'll see if he's able to get the town hall down or not. But overall, the big positive here is that instead of getting sidetracked and going over to these buildings, the clan castle troops actually drew these dragons into the middle right here. So sometimes the clan castle can definitely help you out if you think about exactly where and when it's going to pull your troops. And so as you can see, the balloons went down, unfortunately, before they were able to take out the air defenses. Then these skeleton traps came up and kept the dragons distracted while the air defense finished them off. So with only 2 dragons and a couple of balloons in the core, it wasn't enough to get the town hall down. And then again, these last dragons are just going to get picked off around the going around the edge here. So run into a similar end situation. Little better execution with an attempt to make a funnel. This didn't funnel the second level as well. You can't just funnel the first level on these types of bases. You also have to make sure you funnel that second row of buildings as well because of this anti-dragon moat that will keep them distracted around the edge. So now that we've critiqued a lot of failed attacks from that particular war, and I know we had plenty of them to choose from, I was certainly guilty of a couple myself. Let's take a look at some of the successes. We had some really good attacks against some pretty difficult bases in this clan. A lot of these bases almost all had level 6 air defenses, so they were very tough to use dragons against. They had a lot of anti-dragon base designs that we had some trouble with, but we had a couple people that did a really excellent job. And Modster is one of those. I believe I have 2 of his videos on here. Did some very, very well executed dragon attacks. So first, we're going to take a look at this base. This one isn't particularly anti-dragon, but we do have these spread out air defenses. Got 1, 2, 3 air defenses. So they are spread out. They're not all centralized in the core. However, they are a little bit unbalanced towards the southeast side over here. So if I were doing this attack, I would probably actually just use a lightning spell on this one in the back here, because it is pretty far away from the other 2, and the other 2 are actually fairly close to the edge. And then I would funnel my dragons here, off this builder hut and into this builder hut, and then off this dark elixir drill and into the lab here. Make sure I build my funnel really good, and then drop the rest of my dragons here. You actually don't even need to get to the middle here because the air defenses are kind of on the corners. So you really just want to make sure your dragons are moving as almost like a wall across this way here. So we kind of want to create a little bit of a funnel here, a little bit of a funnel here. Then we want a wall of dragons right here, and we want them moving across the base like this. So that is how I would approach this attack. Those dragons should make it to these air defenses relatively quickly if you keep them all together, and then you use the lightning spell in the back one here. I'm not sure yet where Modster does this attack from. It's been a while since I watched it, but I do see he brought some lightning spells, so it looks like he's going to be using one of those, which I think is a pretty good strategy given the layout of the air defenses. And so we'll take a look here what he does first. So he is putting dragons down on these trash buildings here in the corner. Make sure that he doesn't leave those for later on. So we destroyed that builder hut over there. And it looks like he's actually going to come in from this corner. So he's dropped a whole bunch of the dragons on the corner there. And then he's going to use hogs on this other air defense here. This is actually a really good example of doing something a little bit more advanced than just your standard dragon with balloons behind it. Now, I hadn't planned for this, as I mentioned, but I think this is a very good strategy to take and kind of go over a few reasons why. So right here, we have this very centralized air defense, which we would want to take out with our 3 lightning spells. Right here, we have this air defense that only has 1 other defense on its way into it. So that's a good target for hogs or even balloons. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I prefer balloons personally over hogs. Even though they're a little bit slower, there's less defenses that can attack them. And if you wait until the air defense starts firing at a dragon, the balloon should make it in pretty well. But, it can be a little hit or miss because they do take so long. So hogs have the advantage that they are quick. So he planned this out so where he dropped the hogs that they would path first to this cannon and then immediately onto this air defense. And I think that was a very good strategy here. And that's why he dropped all these dragons on the corner over here, because that's where the last air defense is going to be remaining. Now, normally, as I mentioned, it's not always a great idea to attack from the corner, but when the only air defense left is on the corner, then that's definitely where you want to attack from, because you want to make sure you're getting to it as quickly as possible. So as you'll see, these hogs down here, they're going to come in, and they're going to take out the cannon, and they're going to immediately move in to take out that air defense. You do have some threats from that wizard tower there, and it did some pretty good work on them, but the hogs were high enough level that they were able to kill the air defense before they got killed by that wizard tower. So you do have to be a little careful, especially with wizard towers. That's kind of the arch nemesis of the hog, obviously, other than giant bombs. If there would have been, let's say, and I actually had this happen to me once, if there was a giant bomb right here, for example, his raid probably would have been wiped out because that air defense would not have gone down. So I might even in that case drop the hogs before I drop the dragons just to see what happens, because if for some reason the hogs don't take out the air defense, you might want to change your dragon job to be on this side instead of this corner. Other than that, though, I mean, he didn't run into that problem, obviously. The hogs took out the air defense perfectly. The lightning spell took out this one, and the dragons took out this one up here pretty quickly, and that leaves very little to take out the dragons for the rest of the raid. Even though this builder hut's still down here in the corner, they're going to finish off these buildings with plenty of time to come back and 3-star this base. So overall, this is a very good example of how you can use some advanced planning to get a good 3-star attack. When you have air defenses that are exposed on the edges like that, you can use balloons and you can use hogs to target them specifically. So really good job by Modster here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the next attack. So this is another attack from Modster. He had a very good war with 2 3-star attacks, and if you're looking for dragon advice, feel free to ask Modster. I've seen a lot of very good attacks from him since he's been with us. So he obviously puts a lot of thought into it and very good at executing those attacks. So let's take a look at this one and see what we can learn from it. So this is another example of a base with fairly spread out air defenses. And this one might be a little bit more difficult to use the strategy that he did last time because there's more defenses near these air defenses. So if you dropped your hogs to try to take this one out over here, they might path over to this wizard tower. Same with balloons. Instead of going into the air defense. Same thing over here. If you drop your hogs or your balloons here, they could path to the archer tower and then be dead by the time they get there. And then again, we run into the same issue over here, although this one seems to be the most likely for success, as that archer or the air defense is right behind the archer tower. But it's a little bit of a tricky possibilities there. So, you could take that approach, but there's a little bit more risk than the last one. But again, we do have the 3 spread out, so oftentimes it's a good strategy to take out one with your lightning spell and then try to deal with the other 2 with the dragons. If I were attacking this base, I would probably use a lightning spell on either one of these 2 air defenses that are here on the south side, and then try to drop my dragons either from this side or from this side. Just because I think that there's some risks with using hogs or balloons, but, let's see what he does. So we've got the first couple dragons going down here, taking out these trash buildings. Looks like he's creating a funnel to this air defense right here. He does have 3 lightning spells as well, so we'll see which. So he does use the lightning spells on this air defense here. And then I'm curious to see what he's got in his clan castle. Okay, so out of his clan castle, we see he's taking the same approach and using hogs again. One thing here that was really smart, he didn't need to do last time because it was so easy for the hogs to get to the air defense, is he dropped his barbarian king right here first before he dropped his hogs. And that allowed his barbarian king to take fire from that cannon. Now, he could have done something even just a little bit better. If he would have dropped the barbarian king, let's say over here on that gold mine, then it would have taken fire actually from both the cannon and the archer tower. And it would have tanked both of those away from the hogs. But, just taking one of those off is generally going to be helpful anyways. So that was a very smart move right there to drop the Barbarian King and let him take some damage for those hogs. And we'll see the hogs move in and take out that cannon. And they don't get distracted. The air defense is their first target immediately. And you'll see they take those out just barely. Very, very, very close there. They'd have some cannons and the wizard tower. It's a really high-level wizard tower hitting those hogs. So that was really close, and had they not finished that air defense off in time, probably would not have been a 3-star raid, but they were successful. So it made every difference that he had the Barbarian King down to take some damage from those cannons. And pretty sure that the hogs would not have been successful if he didn't do that. So another excellent raid by Modster. He's got 6 dragons left. All the air defenses are down. There's only 1 archer tower and 1 Tesla, so it's going to be pretty easy pickings from here on out for those dragons. So this attack is going to be from Dopaz. And Dopaz is attacking this base here that again has some 2 higher level air defenses and then a third one that seems to be probably a level 5. Now the air defenses are somewhat spread out, but they're not very close to the edge. So this probably wouldn't be a good candidate for one of the strategies that Modster used previously with hogs or even with balloons, just because it would be hard to get them in this far from the edge. But they're not really centralized. They are spread out a little bit. So I do like the strategy here of using the 3 lightning spells. Now typically whenever you have 3 lightning spells and there's different level air defenses, it's usually best to use your lightning spells on the highest level air defense that there is. Because 3 lightning spells will kill a level 5 or a level 6 air defense. Doesn't matter. And so you might as well take out the one that's going to do the most damage. So I would take out one of these 2 level 6 air defenses with my lightning spells. And in particular, I would probably take this one here that's kind of separated on the backside and then attack from this side of the base. So you can make your wall of dragons go here, funnel them into here, and then take out these 2 air defenses themselves. Now the tough part here though is that there's 2 storages right here as well as the town hall. It's a lot of high hit point buildings. The dragons will get stuck on those for a while and they will take a lot of fire from these air defenses. So I'll be curious to see what Dopaz does, but that's kind of the general strategy that I would take with this. So he's actually going to use the lightning spell on the lower level air defense. Which isn't a bad thing in this case, just because I think these 2 air defenses right here are closer to this side than these 2 were to this side, especially without all these high hit point buildings to get in their way. Coming from this side, we only have this 1 elixir storage here to cause some big problems. We've also got the clan castle here that could draw the dragons in, so that's probably helpful. So I think that that's not a bad strategy. I typically like to use the lightnings to take out one of the higher level air defense, but I think this base layout just made it best to do that one. And I know this is a 3-star attack, so obviously his strategy worked out perfectly. So we'll take a look. He zapped the air defense, and now we've got these dragons down. We started creating the funnel. And while he is attacking from this side, notice that he started the funnel just a little bit off, skewed to this side, which is good because these air defenses are over here. You don't want your dragons to get stuck on that town hall before they take out the air defenses if possible. So he's set up a very nice funnel. You can see all these dragons gathering right in the middle here. He's got the balloons coming in behind them very closely, which is good. Timing was excellent on that. So these dragons are taking all the fire, and now these balloons are coming in to hopefully take out some of these defensive buildings. So they've got the archer tower, and then they're going to branch off and go straight over to the air defenses. And the balloons took out the 2 air defenses perfectly. That was an excellent example of how to use a dragloon right there. So he actually took out all of the defensive buildings to the point that where he dropped the balloons, they would funnel straight into the air defenses. The dragons took all the fire while the balloons took out the air defenses. And again, once you get all those air defenses down so quickly, the rest of it is pretty easy cleanup for these level 3 dragons. So that was an excellent attack by Dopaz, really well planned and then perfectly executed. You do have to be really careful with those balloons that you don't drop them too early or else they'll take too much fire, or drop them too late or else the dragons will take too much fire before they get there. So he timed that excellently. So this last attack that we're going to take a look at today is by Coetzee. And so this is another base where the air defenses again are fairly well spread out. So we've got 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Now with the air defenses like this actually might be a good example of a chance that you could use hogs or balloons. Looking at this air defense in particular, there's no defensive buildings in this line right here. So if you look, the first line of defensive buildings coming from the southwest is right there. So if you actually dropped, let's say, hogs or even balloons in the right place here, and again, I would go with balloons personally, you could get them to path straight to that air defense, and that would be the first building that they attack. So I think that's a good target for picking that one off with some balloons. And then what I would actually do is I would triple lightning this air defense right here. And then I would build my funnel of my dragons to get them into this air defense here, ideally. So you take out these trash buildings, you take out these trash buildings, drop the rest of your dragons across here, and then hopefully they go into that air defense right there. The key is, if you were to use this particular strategy, is to wait until this air defense right here starts firing on those dragons. Once that air defense starts firing on the dragons, that's when you immediately want to drop your balloons. That way the balloons don't take that fire. And that'll give the balloons time, because they do have a distance to go here to come in and take that air defense. You would also have to be really careful with dropping it in exactly the right spot, because if you drop it a little bit off to the left or to the right, it could go to the mortar and then get distracted over this way, or it could go to the archer tower and die before it gets back to the air defense. But that's the strategy that I would take. And so let's take a look, though, and see what Coates's going to do on this base. So he does have 3 lightning spells, and so he starts with dropping a dragon on this builder's hut over there, and then one down on this lab here. So it looks like he's attacking from the southeast, using the lightning spell on the back end there. So the big advantage here is this person has actually put all of these storages outside of the range of the air defense. Actually a pretty poorly designed dragon base, just because those storages take a really long time to kill, and you want dragons taking air defense fire while they're working on them. So he was good to drop a whole bunch of dragons on there first, and that way by the time the dragons got into this second row, there weren't a lot of high health buildings left. He did drop his balloons from this corner here, clearly trying to get them to target this air defense. I think they're going to make it over there, just even if a little bit slow, but I think they will make it in time. So he kind of did the slightly reverse version of the strategy that I was talking about, but very similar idea. Bring the loons in from one side once the dragons started taking fire. And those loons did take out the air defense. The dragons took out the other, and that means you got 6 dragons left, and all the air defenses are down. So again, it's going to be really easy cleanup. So this is another great example of using hogs or balloons strategically. Really, in most cases, I think it's best to have 5 max level balloons in your clan castle. You either drop them behind the dragons or even from the sides, as Coatesy just did, or even completely on the opposite side, depending on how the base is laid out. But you really want to think about where you're putting those balloons so they're going to do the most damage, and also when you're putting them down, so that they're not too early where they take fire, they're not too late where they don't help the dragons because they get there too late. So that's generally the idea, and these are some excellent executed attacks. So I really think that what we want to shoot for is make sure everybody is planning to the same level of precision that these last couple attacks have been. As you've seen, everything was meticulously planned. Where to drop these balloons, where to drop those hogs, which air defense to take out, and exactly how to funnel the dragons. You also notice that these attacks did make very good funnels, so the dragons headed in the direction that the attackers wanted to. I think these are some really good examples, and if you use these strategies, and if nothing else, make sure you're putting this level of planning into every one of your attacks, we should see a lot more success, and hopefully that'll translate to more 3 stars on our Town Hall 8s. So that's the goal, and hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you do, let me know, and hopefully we can do this some more in future wars with future attacks. So clash on, everybody.